And we should be live. Are we live on Facebook? Let's see. Yeah, I believe we're live. Okay, terrific. Okay, so we are live. I'm going to change the view so that, okay. Okay, everybody. Okay, everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. And there we go. Okay, we are on page 139, I believe. No, 239.
What book are you studying?
We're in Mesilat Yesharim. All right, and we are page 239. Give me a second, I'll tell you exactly what we're holding. Page 193, sorry, 193 it says here. 193. Okay. 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 Second. All right. Any friends on Facebook? Anyone on Facebook? I'm going to tell them that. Okay. There we are. Okay.
What chapter are you on?
We are on chapter.
I have the English version.
Chapter 11. Okay. You have the English that same edition.
Is this Cleanliness?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, page 193. Okay, we're ready to begin. Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here live with all of you online. We are in the middle of the chapter of cleanliness, and what we were talking about is bringing ourselves to a point of holiness, of purity, of cleanliness in all of our actions. We spoke about the first example that the Ramchal gave us here was cleanliness with regard to financial dealings, and then the second was with regarding to I would say he uses the terminology here of illicit relations. All right, so, you know, the idea of there not being enough of a cautiousness of the pitfalls that one might experience in the world that we're in today. So Ramchal now, and if you remember last week, the Ramchal mentioned that there were different aspects to this, and we discussed particularly. We spoke about not looking and not bringing a person should not bring himself to a point of temptation. A person shouldn't bring himself to a place, right? For example, there are certain places that a person could go to that would have a negative influence on them in these areas, right? So don't go to those places. There are certain people, they speak with certain lewdness, with a certain type of, inappropriateness that can lead to certain thoughts, to certain actions, and so on and so forth. So that's on a very, very simple level to keep a person clean of these types of things. Next, so the prohibitions involving speaking and hearing, the inyan adiburim ha'isha, with regarding to speaking with women, right? Behed Yeshaninu, the Mishnah explicitly states in 1:5 of Pirkei Avot, Kol amar b'sicham isha, anyone who converses excessively with a woman, gorem ra'al atzmo, causes evil to himself. Ubishmiya amru, and with regard to hearing, the sages said, Kol be'isha erva, the singing voice of a woman is considered erva, is considered a nakedness. Now let's understand what this means for a second. And to many of us, this may seem, Rabbi, thank you very much. In American culture, we're a little bit more educated, and we're a little bit more human. And thank you very much with you think, this is the rabbis. Maybe 200 years ago, it was attractive to hear a woman sing, or it was attractive to talk to a woman, and therefore they made these restrictions. And today it's not, right? So one of the things that we established already last week was that it is a guarantee that there would never have been a single instance of the Me Too movement had there been these issues been taken seriously. If we only were to take these issues seriously, we wouldn't have the same problems that we had not long ago in Hollywood, and it continues to be a problem. It continues to be a problem. Why? Excessive conversation with women who we're not married to, and the attraction of a woman's voice, particularly in singing, is one that the halacha says one should distance himself. Another prohibition involving speech and hearing, and furthermore concerning immorality of the mouth and ear, that is talking about lewd matters or listening to such talk. So you have what they call locker room banter, right? And that type of conversation, a bunch of guys, they're just drinking a beer. What's the big deal? It's not the end of the world. We're just having a good time. And the dangers of that could be very serious. And that's what our sages warn us about. Our sages warn us about the dangers of this type of conversation. And that's what the Ramchal here is warning us. Ramchal is telling us we need to be very, very careful of this. He says, Kvar tzavchu kikuchya ve'amru, our sages have already cried out like a crane and declared that the prohibition of such indiscretions are alluded to in the Torah itself. For when the verse states, let him not see ervas davar, literally a matter of immorality among you, ervas dibur, the phrase ervas davar, okay, what does it mean, ervas davar? Literally a matter of immorality. What does that mean? It should be understood to mean ervas dibur, the erva of speech, the immorality of speech. Vizen nivul peh, and this is referring to lewd speech. The Amru, and regarding this prohibition, the sages said, avon nivlus peh, for the sin of speaking lewdly, tsoros mischatros, new troubles arise. The bachure sonehem shel Yisrael mesim, and young men of the enemies of Israel, a euphemism to the Jews themselves, leave this world, they die. The Amru od, and they said further, kol menabel piv ma'amikim lo gehenim, anyone who speaks lewdly, Gehenna is deepened for him, as it is stated. A deep pit is for the mouth that speaks aberrantly. Ve'amru od, and they continue to say, Kol yodim, hakol yodim kala lama nichneses lachuppah. The Talmud says everyone knows why a bride enters the chuppah, goes into marriage. Ella kol menavel piv ve'omro, but anyone who perverts his mouth to actually say it, afilu gzardin shel shivim shana letova, then even if the heavenly court has sealed for him a favorable decree of 70 years, hovchim lo l'ra, they will reverse it for him and replace it with an evil decree. Imagine that. What's the big deal? What's the big deal, right? And our sages warn us so severely about this that we need to be cautioned that speaking properly, whether it be among friends, whether it be just in your own home, is just with your own little circle. There are things that don't need to be discussed. They don't need to be discussed, right? Everybody knows why a kala goes, why a bride goes to canopy, why she gets married, right? And what the results of marriage are. There's no need to discuss that. Right, that's what our sages say is nivul ped. Novel means it's unnecessary speech. It's unnecessary, okay? And it only brings about terrible things for a person himself. And they said even further in the Talmud in Chagiga 5b, even casual conversation between a man and his wife, is recounted to a person at the time of his own judgment. And with respect to listening to this evil kind of speech, they similarly said in Tractate Shabbat, even one who is merely listening to lewd conversations and remain silent. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to comment. I'm not going to say anything, right? Failing to protest has his own Gehenna deepened for him as well. Shenemar Ze'um Hashem Yipol Sham. As it is stated in Proverbs, the scorned of Hashem will fall there. From here we learn that we should have all of our senses free of immorality and anything related to it. That means we have to understand that a person is not only, well, I didn't actually do those things, so leave me alone. That's not the only thing that's important. We have to understand that in Judaism, and the example I gave last week, I want to repeat a little bit on the example we gave last week. You know, the story told about Aristotle, right? So Aristotle was known as a great philosopher, thought unbelievable, genius ideas, genius thoughts. And his students once found him in a very compromising situation, and they asked him, "How is it possible that you're the great Aristotle? How is it possible that this is you? This is what?" So he said, "No." He says, "Now I'm not Aristotle, right?" And that's not a Torah way. That might be a great person when it comes to the realm of philosophy, but that's not what Torah is about. Torah doesn't mean, right now I have my Torah hat on, I have my kippah on, so now I act like a Jew. But when I go outside and I take it off, right, then I'm not. So then I'm free. When I'm in Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That concept is a very non-Jewish concept. It's a very non-Torah concept, right? We are who we are, regardless of where we are, where we're situated. So the fact that a person is now in a different place doesn't change the reality that the relationship we have with God should be the same, notwithstanding where we are. It's very interesting that we see in Parshas Vayetze. Parshas Vayetze is the gracious Noach Lech Vayerach told us Vayetze, the seventh portion in Genesis. Talks about Jacob. It says, and Jacob left one city and went to another city. He went from Beersheba and went to Haran. And the obvious question is, okay, so why do you need to say that he went out, that he left? Our sages say when someone goes out of his regular place, where he has his regular schedule, where he has his regular things that he knows where things go, so then it's solid. When he's in his own place, when he has his own stability, everything is solid. But once you move out of that and you change, then the Yetzer Hara can attack you, and dangerous things can happen. And then people need to create a world where what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's not a Jewish way of living life. That's not a way that a Jew should be living his relationship with God. It's like only when I'm in front of God, that's when I have to be careful. But when I'm not in front of God, when are you not in front of God? Always. You're always in front of the Almighty. So it doesn't make a difference where you are. It's a very important discussion to be had, because we're living in a world, we mentioned this again last week, we mentioned that it's very hard today to listen to any comedy show, to any movie, to any, almost even, any type of broadcast that you have out there without there being something which is illicit, which is inappropriate, which is, even if it's just a joke, even if it's just, why is that necessary? Why is it necessary for people to include that in every single show? There always has to be something inappropriate. Why? Right? I think it's a terrible thing, and we're becoming more and more desensitized, and desensitized in all the wrong areas, by the way, in our culture, right? Where we have this world of political correctness, right? But not when it comes to speaking appropriately with regard to these matters. And then we have the Me Too movement. We have all of this going on. It really is a very challenging world that we're living in. The Torah gives us guidance exactly how to conduct our lives appropriately, wherever we are, regardless of the circumstances. Any questions so far? Dan, any question? All right.
Yeah, I have a question. Define casual conversation with a spouse.
What's about it?
Huh?
What's a casual?
Yeah, you mentioned to avoid casual conversation with your spouse. Elaborate on that.
No. It doesn't say that you should avoid it. It just says that it is recounted to one, right? It says even a casual conversation between a man and his wife is recounted to a person at the time of his judgment. It doesn't mean that he shouldn't have it. On the contrary, you're obligated to have it, following the laws of the Torah, right? That's what, there has to be an appropriate way in which this relationship can grow, right, and can connect. Where we're not just two animals, right? A husband and a wife, and that's no. Obviously, there needs to be a conversation, but just know that it's recounted to you.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, it's not saying that you shouldn't. I want to be clear about that. There's an obligation that part of the physical relationship of a man and a wife, a husband and a wife, is also verbally. Okay, it's not just a physical relationship, but it has to be built on a lot of words and a lot of proper conversation between the two.
Gotcha.
Okay, so but our sages warn us. Our sages warn us to be very, very careful about the words we use. We have to be very, very careful about that. The Ramchal addresses a misconception about the prohibition against lewd speech. The im lechashcha adam lomar. If someone should whisper to you saying, Shema she'amru al nivul peh, that the sages spoke about lewd speech, eino ela kedei la'ayim laharchik adam min avera. You know why the sages really said it? They didn't say it for what you think. They said it only to frighten and distance a person from the severe transgression of an actual act of immorality. That's why they said it. And also, accordingly, the ominous words cited above were said specifically about a hot-blooded person, shemidei dabro balidei tava. Only someone who's crazy, only such a person whose desire becomes aroused when speaking about such matters, someone who's out of control and who might be led by those words, to actually commit a major sin. So it's only referring to that person. But someone who's just saying it in jest and as a joke, right? There's no moral significance. There's nothing. And there is no reason to be concerned about it. He says, you know what you should answer such a person? Ad kan divrei yetzer hara. These have been the arguments of the evil inclination. Ki mikra mole sheviu zechron levracha l'rayasam. He says that you just told me that it's just for the weak people, it's just for the hot-headed people, right? That they will go all the way to do terrible things. That's the people that it's talking about. But us, normal, civilized people, we don't do such crazy things. He says, just know that's the argument of the Yetzer Hara. Because there's a verse explicitly telling us about this as proof. Al Kain, al Bachurav lo Yismach Hashem, ki chulo chonef umeira, the chol peh dover nevolim. Therefore, my Lord shall not rejoice over their young men, and he shall not pity their orphans or widows, and they are all flattery and evil, and every mouth utters indecency. Okay, so here he's saying something very interesting. He says, Hine lo hiskira kosovazeh. This verse did not mention any of the cardinal sins. Lo avodah zarah, not idolatry, v'lo gilu arayis, and not illicit relations, v'lo shfichas damim, and not the sin of murder. These are the three cardinal sins. Ela chanufa v'loshen hara v'nivul peh. But what did he say? What does the verse say over here? It's referring to flattery of wicked people, evil speech, and lewd speech. Kulam mechatas hapeh bedibur. Note that all of these are among the sins of the mouth, right? Committed through mere speech. That's it. And yet on their account alone, the fearful decree was promulgated. Al bachurav lo yismach Hashem, val yisoma val almanosav lo yirachem. My Lord shall not rejoice over their young men, and he shall not have pity of their orphans and widows. Elo ha'emes hu kedibri Rabbeinu zechor levracha. Rather, the undeniable truth is as taught by the words of the sages of blessed memory. Shenivel peh hu ervaso shel hadibur mamish. The lewd speech is actually an illicit act of the mouth. Okay? It's an illicit act of the mouth. Umishum znus hu nesar. And it is forbidden because it is an inherent form of immorality. Kechol shar inyan iznus, like all other matters of immorality, chutz migufo shel maaseh, aside from the act of immoral cohabitation itself. Right? So we say kissing, well, that's one thing. Hugging, that's another thing, right? Each one, right? Speech is also one. Speech is also one. And our sages share this idea with the great seriousness. Dan, I hear a question coming from you.
Me?
Yeah. I see it. I see your body language. You have a question there.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Just picking on someone, right? Scott, you're next. So here we say, so he says, okay. So he says, aside, they are forbidden matters in their own right. Aside from the fact that they instigate and lead to the primary forbidden act itself. And this is the line with the precedent set by the laws of Nazir, right? Which the sages mentioned in the Midrash that we cited above. We mentioned the Midrash earlier. If you remember, it says like this. If you remember, it said about the Nazir. It says the Nazir, right? What is prohibited to the Nazir? It's prohibited for him to drink wine. And yet, what do we add to his prohibition? We add to his prohibition not to eat grapes, not to eat raisins, not to have any product that has any raisins or grapes or wine in it. We go so many steps to ensure that he doesn't fall into a situation where he will end up drinking wine, right? The same thing our sages tell us, because we're talking here of the trait of nikayon, of cleanliness, to be pristine in how we act, to be pristine with the people around us, right? So imagine if we use this cautiousness, not to joke around about such matters, not to make fun of such matters, not to make light of it, because what really happens is that this leads a person to be clean in every area of life, right? We spoke about financial challenges that one might have because of the lack of cleanliness, right? So if a person isn't clean in the way that they deal in business, so it'll lead to theft. It'll lead to being dishonest, a little here, a little there, a little there. Before you know it, right? There's no honesty anymore. So we have to be so careful, and that's what the Ramchal here is teaching us. Ramchal is teaching us to be so cautious that every word that we say should be one which is clean. That every word that we say should be one which is holy, and that way we don't fall into a trap, God forbid, of what happened to a what's the guy's name from Hollywood, right? The Mr. Me Too, right? What happens is that it comes from one comment to one joke to one gesture to one touch. Before you know it, terrible things are happening. And again, it starts with cleanliness. It starts with taking a single step of saying, this is not a joking matter anymore. Okay. Having discussed improper speech, Ramchal turns to the prohibition against improper thoughts. Concerning lewd thoughts, the sages already stated in the beginning of the brisa that we brought in the beginning of Mesilat Yesharim, where Rav Pinchas ben Yair, he says, "V'nishmarta mikol davara," that the Torah states you shall guard against anything evil. There's a verse in the Torah. You should guard yourself against anything evil. Shelo yeharher adam bayom, that a person shouldn't think lewd thoughts by day and thereby come to ritual impurity at night. Ve'amrod, and our sages said even further, that sinful thoughts, lewd thoughts, are more severe than the sin itself sometimes. And this idea is expressed by an explicit verse. Toavas Hashem mafshavos slave, right? And this is in Proverbs again by King Solomon. The abomination of Hashem are thoughts of evil, right? Because what leads the force of inappropriate behavior? What leads to it? What leads to the actions, to the inappropriate behavior? It's the thoughts. It's the thoughts, the desires, the temptations that lead to it. Ramchal, I just want to stop for a second, okay? I understand we're living again in a world where most people who hear this online will say, thank you very much. This is ancient thinking, and we're living in 2020, and give me a break, okay? True. I understand that people will say that, okay? But think for a second how our sages understood the truth and nature of humanity. And the Ramchal was written 200 years ago, right? Before we had Facebook. By the way, in 2012, over 35% of divorces were Facebook related. You know why? Because innocent Joe met with his old girlfriend from high school, Sally, on Facebook. Okay? And one thing led to the other. And then in the divorce documents, that's what was brought. He ended up divorcing his wife. She ended up divorcing her husband because her high school, crush was what she found on Facebook. And it really is a It's a dangerous world when we don't understand the nature of how it works, right? And our sages know it, right? We understand that the manual for living, you want to understand the manual for living, that's the Torah. So it's not that we're extremists, we're realists, right? The Torah is a book of reality. The Torah is telling you, we may not want to hear it. We might want to live in La La Land, right? In Hollywood land, where everything is okay and there's no limits. And then we have what we have. And what we see doesn't work, right? We understand in the Torah, it's a very important conversation, maybe not so appropriate for it to be on Facebook Live, but it is. So we'll share the words of Torah because it's Torah, right? But we understand that the nature of a man and a woman, right, that there is an attraction. There's a natural attraction between a man and a woman. Now, if they're able to get married, they should be married, right? But if they're not able to get married, then what will be the benefit of this relationship? It's very, very rare that a relationship can just stay, we're just friends, platonic, we're just friends. It's very, very unlikely in most cases in the world, right? You wonder, what got him to do such a crazy thing? And what got her? She has a great family and he has a great family. Why did they do this stupidity? Well, life happens, they say, right? No, it started with a conversation. And that's where our sages warn us. And they tell us it is dangerous unless we are cautious about it. It doesn't mean that you can't talk to another woman. That doesn't mean that you can't have, look, in the business world, that's the reality. In the world that we're living in, that's the reality. That's true. But Ramchal is giving us the warning here and telling us we need to check ourselves constantly, because there's no one who is totally immune to this. There's no one who's immune, and there's no age that one is immune to this either, right? Oh, well, she's 90 years old, so, and you don't think there are stories of that happening as well? There are. Look in the news every day. You'll find another crazy story and another crazy, like, who would have thought? Our sages tell us there is no one immune. You understand that the sage with a beard from here to Tel Aviv, to Yerushalayim, okay? Someone with a beard is so righteous and so holy, and he's 90 years old, right? He's still not trusted by the Torah. With the woman he's not married to be alone, right? Isn't that amazing? He's still not trusted because the Torah knows the reality of how these things work. That's not to say that we're all evil and we're all sick pigs, and no one is saying that. We're saying that one thing, if we're not cautious, we may fall into a trap. And it's most likely that if one is not cautious, they will fall into a trap. And that's why we have these warnings. Okay? The Torah is not saying that we're all evil, but the Torah is saying that we're capable of falling into a trap and do things that later we'll regret. All right? Any questions here? Yes. I can't hear you. You got it. I don't hear anything. Could be that you're not muted from my side. I don't know. It's not. If you want, you can type it in on the bottom. There's a chat button. You can type it in, and I'll try to answer whatever question you have. All right. I just don't hear anything. I'm sorry. All right. Let's continue. Okay. So the Ramchal summarizes the content of this chapter to this point. Until now, we have discussed the cleanliness, the nikiyut, with regards to two severe transgressions. Shebnei Adam Karovim Likosha Banfem, whose offshoots people are likely to stumble in. Mipnei Rubam Shel Ha'anafim, because of the abundance of such offshoots, V'rov Netias Libo Shel Adam, and because of the strong inclination of a person's heart towards them, V'ta'avaso Alehem, and due to his desire for them. And those two things we mentioned were money, and why every single human being wants money, and is capable of falling into a trap of attaining it dishonestly. And second is the illicit relations, right? Everyone has sexual urges, and if we aren't careful, we can also fall into that trap. Okay, Lenny, Uncle Lenny, is your microphone working now? Don't hear anything. I don't hear anything.
Do you see him?
I do, yeah. I see you, but I don't hear you. All right, so we're going to continue. I don't hear a word. Okay. So the next is nikius, cleanliness from forbidden foods. Umadrega shlishi sachar gezel va'arayos. He says the third level after theft and illicit relations of desire and temptation that a human being has, le'inyan achemda, in terms of a person's coveting them, hinehu inyan isur hama'acholos, are the foods whose consumption is prohibited. Bein be'inyan atrefos atmam, whether in regard to non-kosher food themselves, bein be'inyan ta'aruvosein, or regarding the mixtures of non-kosher food or kosher foods that are forbidden to be together, right? You can have glatt kosher meat and Chalav Yisrael cheese, right? Mixing them together is a prohibition, right? Bein be'inyan basar b'chalav or b'chalav b'dam, whether it's regarding the consumption of milk and meat or forbidden fats or foods of even kosher animals. Ve'inyan bishulei goyim, regarding food cooked by an idolater. Ve'inyan ge'ulei goyim, or regarding foods prepared in non-kosher utensils belonging to idolaters. Yayin nischam v'stam yenam, or regarding their libation wine or their ordinary wine. Kol ele hanikiyus bohem tzorich digdu gadol. In each of these areas, the attainment of nikiyus, of cleanliness, requires great precision. The tzorich chizuk, and requires constant re-strengthening and fortitude to control them. Ki yesh tavas halev hamisaviv b'ma'acholim hatovim. For among the challenges one will face, there is the heart's natural craving for good food. Is there anybody who doesn't like good food? No, of course, we all love good food. Everybody loves good food, right? And there is the monetary loss associated with refraining from forbidden mixtures and the like, right? When you can buy a Big Mac for 99 cents and you go to a kosher restaurant and to get a burger or a kosher burger, a kosher Mac, right, in a kosher restaurant will be significantly more, right? So there's the financial element. And there is the fact that the details of cleanliness in these areas are as numerous as all of their many laws, which are known and which are classified in the books of the classic decisors. So, what our sages tell us here is that there are many, many details when it comes to the laws of eating, and eating appropriately, eating properly, and not, God forbid, taking a David, 1 second, and not taking from food that we shouldn't be eating from. Yes, David.
Quick question.
Sure.
Where do you put addictions in here?
Oh, I think addiction falls right in here. And we're all addicted to something. The question is, what are we doing to not fall into the trap? Okay? We're all addicted. Everyone is addicted to something. I don't know a human being who's not addicted to something. We're all addicted, right? Now, some it could be an addiction to holiness and spirituality. Some it could be an addiction to food. Some it could be an addiction to the other areas of money. Money is also an addiction, by the way. There are people who cannot control themselves when it comes to money. They just can't. They can't help themselves, right? And whatever it takes to earn that money is what they will do, whether it's honestly or dishonestly. It doesn't make it right. So what we're saying here is that there are things that one can do that can limit, and that's what they'll teach you in any addiction counseling, right? They'll teach you what are the triggers that make you fall into the trap of your addiction. So we're not negating the reality. The reality is that we all have addictions, and that's what we're trying to do here, is get to a point where we do not fall into the trap of that addiction. Yes, Uncle Lenny. I don't hear anything. Sorry. I'm gonna tell Scott to come take care of it and fix it for you, so that we can hear you. I want to hear your beautiful voice. I want to hear your brilliant questions. Right. So let's continue here. So hopefully you'll get it fixed. It might be some setting on your phone. You're on a phone or on a tablet, right? So there's probably a button that needs to be pressed so that we can. Okay. Despite the challenge, it is vital to meticulously observe these laws. One who is lenient with these prohibitions in an area where the sages say to be stringent, eino elamashkis lenafsho, he's corrupting his soul. V'kach amru, for so did the sages in Vayikra, right? In Leviticus, expound the verse, Lo tetamu bahem v'nitmeisem bam. Do not contaminate yourself through them, non-kosher species, right? Lest you become contaminated through them. This seemingly redundant expression teaches that im mitamim atem bam, if you defile yourselves by consuming them, sofchem litame bam, you will ultimately become personally defiled through them. So what happens is, first we defile ourselves by eating it, and if you defile yourselves by consuming them, you will ultimately become personally defiled through them. V'hainu ki ha'ma'acholos ha'asurus machnisin tuma belibo b'nafsho shel adam. This is because this is really shocking. It says as follows. Ramchal tells us that it is because forbidden foods introduce impurity into the heart and soul of a person. Right? Forbidden foods introduce impurity into the heart and soul of a person. To the point that the holiness of the omnipresent, blessed is he, departs and distances itself from him. So the food we eat, many people think, it's very interesting, many people think, well, it's just food, you know what I'm saying? So let me give you so that you understand, okay? And I've given this example before. You see right over here, you see this piece of flesh right here that I'm touching right now? See this piece of flesh? This piece of flesh, you know what it was once? It was food. Right? It was food that we ate. You know that your body is a new body every 30 days. Every 30 days, it's a new body. Your entire body gets recycled every 30 days. Right? You have new cells that are constantly being created, and those new cells create the new layers of skin, and right, and every organ that we have is being recreated every 30 days. It's a remarkable thing. By the way, science says this, but this the Torah tells us already way back, right? The food that we eat becomes who we are. We've given many examples of this, of how the Torah tells us that the certain foods we should and should not eat is based on the influences that we get from those foods as well. We asked a question recently in one of the classes, why the Hasidah is not a kosher animal. The Hasidah is like a flamingo type bird, and it's not kosher. And why is it called the Hasidah? Our sages tell us because it does acts of kindness. It does chesed. Chesed is a great thing, acts of kindness. It's phenomenal. We should eat from that bird, right? And we should attain that trait of kindness, right? Sages tell us, yeah, but it's not a kosher animal because it is very selective with its kindness. It only does kindness with its own type. It only does kindness with its own. So if you're not part of my family, you don't get any kindness. If you're part of my family, I'll be kind. But if you're not my type, if you're not part of my community, if you're not part of my culture, my country, my nationality, then I can't do kindness. You want to know what real kindness is? Look at what Israel is. Israel is a country that's unbelievable kindness. Right? They have special units that are dedicated just to help natural disasters in other countries. They're ready to go. So when Iran, who is the sworn enemy of the Jewish people, of the state of Israel, when they have an earthquake, the first country to offer assistance is Israel. Are these people crazy? What's wrong with them? Why would they go and offer assistance? Because that's what true kindness is. Kindness is, if you're Jewish, we'll help you. If you're not Jewish, we're not. No, that's not real kindness. That's the Hasidah. We don't like that. And that's why it's not a kosher animal. Scott, you had a question.
With regard to the preparation of the food, if the food is not, the food itself is kosher, but is not prepared in a kosher vessel, is it completely lose all of its holiness? Is it an all or nothing equation, or is it a matter of is there, I don't want to call it partial credit, but if you're eating the right foods, but it happens to be put in a bowl that had before.
Okay, so let me. Okay, it's a tricky question because we're online and I can't analyze this properly. But let me just encourage you. Okay, every single step counts. Okay. I can tell you that I've done things in my own kitchen here where my wife says to me, stop strafing up my kitchen, okay? And, she just get out. I'll do the cooking. You just, get out of my kitchen. We all make mistakes in our kitchen. We all have things that we have done. Kosher food, glad kosher meat. We buy the Chalav Yisrael milk, right? But we're using the wrong utensils, so on and so forth. So the first thing you need to do is don't be discouraged. Okay, that's the reality of our growth in our learning of the laws of kosher. Also, I'm left-handed in both hands when it comes to the kitchen, so I don't really know what is and what isn't the right utensils to use and what should be right. What's milchiks, what's fleishiks. So we all make mistakes. That's normal. That's normal, right? So the first thing is don't be discouraged and don't think like, I'm going to burn because I did. Don't worry about it. Okay, you're doing great. Take it step by step and keep on learning and keep on trying and don't worry about it. Okay, but as we grow, there's more and more that we can add to it, and that's what we're trying to do. I have to just reiterate this: life is not about being perfect; it's about pursuing perfection. You understand, Scott? It's not about being perfect. It's about pursuing. We're on that incline, that upward incline. Every day we're going to grow. Every day we're going to be better than we were yesterday. Okay? So don't be discouraged and don't worry. Yes, we have a question here from, what if a person, from Lily, what if a person is more interested in kashrut than the other? You mean in a relationship, I assume, correct?
You said in a marriage.
In a marriage, yes. Okay. So yes, so that's a big challenge. It's a very big challenge. Here's another question for you. Really, here's another question for you. What do you do in a relationship where one is more interested in eating healthy than the other? What do you do when in a relationship one is interested in a vacation to a certain place and the other one isn't? And what do you do? Right? These are always challenges that we have.
I have to sit down.
What's that?
I have to sit down. I have to sit down.
Okay. So we have that a lot where there is where in a relationship there are different levels. There's one spouse who's at one level of spirituality. I want to share with you a story. Okay, one of the torch trips that were taken to New York, the students met with a great rabbi. The rabbi's name was Rav Matisyahu Salomon. And Rav Matisyahu Salomon is a very, very prominent rabbi He's one of the leading sages in the Lakewood Yeshiva. And he met with some of our students. And the students were all married, all growing in their Judaism, and all facing a similar struggle. And the struggle is that their growth pace, their growth mode was not matching their spouses. And what should we do? It's limiting. And one of them was like, I'm ready to keep Shabbos, but my wife is not willing to hear about it. Another one is, I'm ready to keep a kosher kitchen, and my wife is not ready to hear about it. And it's not only the wife, sometimes it's the wife who wants to grow and not the husband. And the rabbi started crying. The rabbi started crying. He started crying. He says, you know something? This is the most painful question I get, and I don't have an answer. He says, I don't have an answer. What can you do? Right? What can you do? And I've had many, many couples come to me and say, listen, this is not what I signed up for. I didn't sign up for a husband to become Shomer Shabbos on me. Right? We were high school sweethearts. We were living the life, living the dream. He's making money. Everything is great. And suddenly you throw kosher on me. And suddenly we're not going to mixed beaches. And suddenly we're going to keep Shabbos. And suddenly, we're not going to go to the Xmas party of is a lot of things that change. And that's why it's important to I think, be in a conversation of growth mode. And I think that needs to be, none of us are perfect, right? And none of us in our relationships are perfect. And my wife is, I'm not for sure. But it's like we all make mistakes. But the idea is we're aiming towards perfection. And God doesn't expect us to be perfect. God only wants us to be in a growth pattern. That's it. And to be the greatest we can be. To be perfect, I don't know that anybody can be perfect. I don't know anybody who's perfect, right? We all make mistakes, and we all are living with the realities that we're living in, and we need to try our best to elevate ourselves, to elevate our family, to elevate our circumstances, our community, and to take a step, and not to stagnate. That at the end of the day, there's no situation, there's no answer to every situation. We all have challenges, and we're all have different circumstances that we need to deal with. All right, did I answer your question, Lily? You didn't run away, right? Okay, there you are. You're still there. Hopefully I answered your question. Any other questions so far?
Yes, you answered my question.
Oh, terrific. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here on Monday nights as well.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Susan, you want to join us? You want to hop in? You have a question here? No? Okay. Okay, anybody else want to ask anything before we move on?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes.
Getting back to not talking to women.
Yes. No.
What if you're in a working situation where you're in business and you're required to interact with this woman all day long?
Right. So look, there's nothing wrong with talking to a woman. Okay, let's make it clear. There's nothing wrong with talking to a woman, but particularly when it's in a business environment where it's required, right? But what we're talking about here is where it's just casual conversation with a woman you're not married to or you're not dating, and that's a situation which is that's a situation that will never end up good. Just to have a casual friendship is what we're talking about. We're not talking about where a person is, in business, they need to, you have to, you're obligated to, fine. But it shouldn't become now a whole personal, let's go out to the bar because I respect the relationship we have in business, and then that can lead to terrible things. It means the business relationship needs to stay a business relationship and not anything other than that. Okay, did that answer your question, Ed? Ed? I hope so. Okay, any other question?
Okay. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Hadassah.
Did you lose me? The connection keeps going in and out.
What's that? Oh, okay. But you got my answer?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. I hope I answered the question okay. Anybody else have any questions before we move on? Okay, to those of you who haven't met her, this is the adorable Hadassah. Okay. Say hello to everyone.
Hello to everyone.
Everyone's waving to you.
Thank you, Hashem.
Okay, she just said thank you, Hashem. Right? That's her theme today, is thank you, Hashem.
Thank you, Hashem.
But nobody can hear you. You have to take this off. Take it off. Say it real loud.
Thank you, Hashem.
Okay. All right, we're going to continue now. All right, so now.
Thank you, Hashem.
Okay, so now what the Ramchal here is telling us is that there is a danger of when a person starts defiling ourselves by what we consume, then ultimately we become personally defiled. So first it starts with just the food, but then it affects our personality, not our personality, but the person who we are, right? We become impacted by that. We become impacted by that food that was let's call it defiled. Then it makes us, we become defiled in the same way that food is. This is because forbidden foods introduce impurity into the heart and the soul of a person. To the point that the holiness of the omnipresent, blessed is he, departs and distances itself from the person. And this is what we learned in the Talmud. When you read the verse, lest you become contaminated through them, don't pronounce the word vinitmesim and you become contaminated by the food, but rather read it vinitamtem, lest you become obstructed, right? Means you're closing the vessels of holiness. You're closing the vessels of purity for the soul by the foods we eat. Sheha'avera mitamtemes libo shel adam. Thus, the message of the verse is that the sin of eating forbidden foods obstructs the person's heart. The person's heart becomes obstructed, and now the channels of holiness are limited. It's interesting that my grandfather became a vegetarian. He was a vegetarian later in his life. He would eat meat twice a year. It wasn't for I don't think it was for health reasons. I think it was more for holiness, spirituality reasons. Again, I don't know. He never explained to me why he did that. But twice a year he did eat meat. There's 2 times a year specifically that there's a mitzvah to eat meat, which is before Yom Kippur, right? The meal right before Yom Kippur, and the other time was on Seder night. And those are the 2 times he would eat meat. It's very interesting. But I think that perhaps it's an extra precautionary measure to keep the channels of spirituality open. It's much easier to keep kosher when you don't eat meat and milk, right? And if a person eats vegetables so it's much easier to keep that clean and to rinse it off so you don't eat the bugs and so on and so forth. A vegetarian is a much easier lifestyle for one to keep kosher. And again, with the goal of keeping the channels of holiness, spirituality, and purity open, keeping those channels open. Okay.
Hi, Rabbi.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, it's Uncle Lenny. He finally fixed it.
Uncle Lenny, how are you?
All right. I have nephews and nieces older than you, so I like you calling me Uncle Lenny. It's taken me so long to get the audio fixed that this comment is back probably 25 minutes ago.
Okay.
But you mentioned, I think you said in the Talmud, it says, and I'm sorry for regressing here, that having a lewd or impure thought or an evil thought is worse than actually acting on that. Am I right to say that?
Correct.
And that kind of reminds me, I don't think you're old enough to remember this, but back in the 70s, Jimmy Carter, who was running for president, said in an interview that he had sinned in his heart because he had lusted after a certain woman. He had thought about it. And I didn't agree with Jimmy then. And the way I feel about it is that I can sit here and say, I'm gonna go rob a bank, and I can think about robbing a bank, or I hate that person so much, I want to kill that person. But if I don't act on that, it's like no harm, no foul. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I lost your picture there, but I got
I hear you loud and clear.
That's right. You don't need to see me. I don't look that great. So, oh, here I am. I'm back. I'm sorry. I'm still in the technology of the 60s. Okay. But I just look at it. It's like no harm, no foul. So this guy, like you talked about, somebody, the person yesterday in your talk, someone cheated you and Zahava in a deal. And, you could think to yourself, I could just kill that guy. I really want to get a gun and do that. But the fact that you're thinking that's just your Yetzer, your evil force, your Yetzer hara, right?
Right.
And as long as we don't act on our evil thoughts, I don't think it's a problem. I mean, who am I to disagree with the sages who wrote the Talmud? But that's just my opinion.
So you're 100% right on most of what you said, and you're right. If you desire to eat non-kosher food and you don't eat it, it's not a sin. If you desire to kill someone but you don't, it's not a sin, right? Okay. But here, when a person desires an inappropriate relationship, our sages have much more serious ideas about what that leads to in a person. I want to share with you just for a second another side of this. Okay, it's a very sensitive topic, obviously, and again, probably not the greatest thing to have on Facebook Live. Okay, in our little class here that we have on Zoom, it's fine. It's more of an intimate. We can see each other. We can talk. It's fine. But I don't know how good this is. Maybe I should take it off of Facebook Live. But let me share with you a different perspective. There was once a lecture I heard by a very, very prominent rabbi, and he was talking to a room of about 1,000 women. 1,000 women. And I hope I'm not gonna open up a whole can of worms here. But okay. He's talking to a whole group of women, and he says, imploring upon these women, he says, I beg you. He says, I beg you. You're living in a community, right? There are so many other people in the community. He says, do me a favor. Be a little bit more modest. Be a little bit more modest. He says, you don't understand the impact you're having on other men. I know you want to dress up nicely for your husband. Dress up nicely for your husband. But don't dress up nicely for your neighbor's husband, because it's causing them terrible, terrible challenges. Okay, I think it's something which means we have to understand that there is a reality. There is a reality of a challenge that we face in this existence, in this world that we're in. Right? Being human beings, we have urges and desires. As such, the Torah gives us the tools to handle it, right? One of them is not having improper speech. Another is not having improper thoughts. because those two are very, very, very dangerous. Okay? And I don't know that it'll be considered as if one's actually sinned, but very close to it. And that's why our sages warn us very, very cautiously. We have to be so careful about falling into this trap. We really do. It's such a challenging, yes. So Lily, to your question, you say, I think women usually dress up for other women, for their friends. That could very well be true. It's most likely true. However, we still have to take in consideration that other people will see us. And some of those other people may be, people who are facing other challenges, who may have attraction, and that might cause them difficulties in their own personal life. Now, it's not saying, don't take this out of context and don't say, listen, I was listening to this rabbi, right? And he said some crazy things, right? The next thing I know, they're going to be banning me on Facebook, and that's not what I'm saying. Okay, what I'm saying is that we just need to think about it and be responsible, because there are other people out there, and we need to be cautious. That doesn't mean that a person should not dress nicely. It doesn't mean that a person shouldn't be attractive. That doesn't mean that a person shouldn't put on makeup and be dressed nicely. Again, we have to just take into consideration that there are other people out there. All right, I didn't pick on you, Dan, in a long time. What are your thoughts? I unmuted you.
I mean, as in addition to what you just said, dressing up nicely can be done in a modest fashion. It doesn't mean that, you can't dress up, a woman can't dress up nicely by any means.
And it's exactly a very good point there. And on the contrary, a woman is supposed to be dressed up for her husband nicely, but modestly, again, particularly when there's other people involved in a community, you're going out for dinner, great. You should look nice, right? But there's a way to do it that's modest, that doesn't have to poke at other people's eyes, okay? And the reason I brought that is for us to understand that there has to be a full sense of understanding the impact that it has, right? Just to say my thoughts are my thoughts and that's it, no harm done, because, well, what leads to action? Thoughts lead to action, right? And it's very, very close to becoming an action when a person is invested in thoughts that are impure.
I would say it's impossible to keep 100% of the time, or even half the time, impure thoughts, or whatever you want to call them, bad thoughts out of your mind. I think it's as long as we have the choice between, as long as God has given us the choice, the free will between doing right and doing wrong, those are always going to exist side by side in us. And it's a matter of having the side of good in you overcome the evil inclination. It's a matter of doing that. But to totally eliminate evil thoughts or forbidden thoughts from your mind, I just don't. That's pretty tough.
Look, if it was easy, the Torah wouldn't have to say it. It is a challenge. It's a real challenge that we all face. Every human being faces, and that's why that's why we're in Mussar study, because it's work. We're here to work on ourselves and to improve ourselves and to avoid getting into situations. Of course, the whole world is filled with people who have thoughts, right? But that's what the Torah is teaching us. The Torah is the working ground, is the workplace for developing ourselves and building ourselves to grow and to become better, right? So I guarantee you that 90% of those, potentially 90% of those thoughts that go into people's mind to be avoided by not falling into certain situations. Certain friends maybe we shouldn't hang out with. Maybe we shouldn't go to certain places. et cetera, and that way, that itself can limit the exposure to such thoughts. Okay, so we're not saying, we're not angels, and we're not robots, and we're not, this is the reality of life. That's true. And we have to work on ourselves as much as we can to limit the exposure and fall into a trap where potentially that can happen. That's exactly why we're having this learning today. Okay, we're running way over time, so let's quickly wrap it up here. So he says, Ki misalekes mimeno hadea ha'amitis v'ruach ha'seichel she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu nosim l'chasidim. He says, for eating the forbidden foods removes from a person the true knowledge and intellectual inspiration that the Holy One, blessed is He, grants to the pious. As Scripture says, for Hashem grants wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding. Thus, having lost true knowledge and intellectual inspiration, such a person will remain animalistic and materialistic. And basically, eating these foods, our sages tell us, creates a barrier between us and the Almighty where we can't absorb, where we can't attain that wisdom. And why? Because we remain animalistic and materialistic. And sunk in the coarseness of this world. Although all sins have this vulgarizing effect on the sinner, forbidden foods are more harmful in this respect than all other forbidden matters. Forbidden foods clutter up a person's channels of spirituality. Since they actually enter a person's body, and then become flesh of his own flesh, this non-kosher food. So I want to share with you a little bit of a painful idea. Okay, last year there was an article written by a rabbi. I'm not going to mention too much details. A local rabbi in Houston who talked before Yom Kippur. She wrote an article about her experience of her first time eating pork, and she actually wrote a beautiful article about how it was a mistake and she had repented for it. And, she was in the hospital and she was served. She asked for vegetarian and she got served by mistake the wrong food. And it was something that she felt that she needed to repent for. It was a mistake, obviously. But it was a very, 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 I think, a beautiful presentation of understanding that this is something which shouldn't be done, and it was wrong, and she had, even though it was a mistake, she had to seek repentance for that. Several years ago, though, there was a different rabbi in a different synagogue who wrote an article talking, and not only that, spoke about it on Yom Kippur, I believe it was, from a pulpit, and talking about how she ate forbidden foods, and it was such a holy experience. It was such a holy experience, and how great it was, and how, and I'm thinking to myself, what in the world is happening here? How distant can one be to not only go against the words of the Torah, but to now glorify it as if this is such a spiritual experience? It's like, God, not only I'm going to do what you don't want me to do, but I'm going to spit in your face while I do it. So look, none of us are perfect, and I'm not here to reprimand anyone, but we need to understand that food, in the opinion of the Torah, is not just something to satiate hunger. Food is considered something spiritual in Judaism. And I have another proof to it, okay? Because the way in which one eats, our sages tell us, right? It says that someone who eats in the marketplace is like a dog. You're considered like a dog. You eat in the marketplace. You're walking down the street eating your pizza, right? A dog eats without any dignity. A human being who eats the way a dog eats is like a dog, right? Why is that so? What's the big deal? It's just food. It's just consuming. Because food in Judaism is not just a physical object. It doesn't just satiate hunger, satiate a body and remove hunger. What food is a spiritual experience. It's a private experience. I said this many times, but I'll say it again. You will never, ever, ever see a picture or a video of the Queen of England eating in public or in private. You know why? Because food is a very intimate thing. It's a very spiritual thing. And it's not something you put on display. Maybe the food itself, but not the person eating it. And the channel in which we talk about it here in the Mesilat Yesharim, what the Ramchal tells us here, is that when a person eats with holiness, when he eats food that is holy, it opens up the channels of holiness. When a person eats food which is contaminated in the sense that it's not pure, it's not holy, then it clogs up those channels of spiritual connection. So Hashem should bless us all. Hashem should bless us all that we should always have those channels wide open, and we should be capable receptacles for that holiness, because God sends that inspiration to us, and we don't want to clog up those channels. Hashem should always use us as good vessels to carry his wisdom and to share his wisdom with the world, hopefully with holiness and with purity. And we should always be happy and healthy and enriched with Torah. Amen. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining, and have a terrific evening.
Thank you, Rabbi.
If there's any questions, I'll stick around for another minute or two.
I just want to make a comment, Rabbi.
Sure.
The rabbi that you said made these remarks on Yom Kippur about how uplifting it was to eat non-kosher food. Maybe she was a descendant of King Jeroboam or King Ahab, who, from what I've read, purposely flaunted erected idols and did everything that they could when they were king to enrage Hashem. So maybe she's a descendant.
You know what? Here's what I want to say. My only comment to it is that I am not here to judge anyone. I don't want to judge anyone. And to me, it just was an illustration of how important it is for us to be people of growth. Yeah. Right? That's to me the most important element, the most important message of all of this is to focus our lives always being in a upward incline for growth and never getting complacent, never being complacent in our own growth. Right? I'm not here to judge that rabbi. I'm not here to call them to say who they are or what they are. I just want every person to have an opportunity to grow and to see the truth and beauty of the Torah every day.
I was only talking of her lineage. That's all. I wasn't making a judgment.
I know. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Have a good night.